Hey everybody, Who's Your Jedi here with another review for you. This time talking episode 10 of season 2 of The Flash called Potential Energy. And this episode I kind of felt was just sort of an okay episode. Um, this is one of those episodes where the real problem is more I'm just not feeling it rather than specific stuff that I can point out in the episode. Which is not to say there wasn't some good stuff. But let's just kind of get right into things. Um, so first of all, we have a bad guy of the week is the Turtle, who is indeed a character from the comics. Not one though that I'm super familiar with. From what I understand, the way he's sort of been reimagined in modern times is rather in keeping, at least in terms of his powers, with what we're seeing here on the show. Now, in terms of his motivations, um, I don't think so. I've only ever really read one story with the turtle that stands out in my mind, and frankly, it doesn't really stand out for being a terribly good story. Basically, like part of it was I remember the turtle had was like trying to screw with the Flash, keep him distracted, so he actually set up this booby trap that was gonna kill Batman with a bomb. And like the Flash even said, "Oh yeah, Batman must have been off his game tonight to not have realized had to have walked into this trap and need me to save him." I'm like, you know what? That's not Batman being off his game. That's just weak ass writing with a kind of a tacked on excuse. So you'll have to forgive me for not having exactly the greatest, um, and like and it was the turtle behind that, as I said. So you'll have to excuse me for not having the greatest impression of this character due to this rather lackluster story being the only one about him that I remember. Anyway, um, now, as I said, played by the guy who was the chief on Battlestar Galactica. Once again, you'll have to forgive me for not being able to remember the guy's name, because I'm, as we've established, rather bad at remembering actors' names. The fellow, like the guy who played Colonel Ty, Paul Paul Hogan, I think that was his name. Yeah, I think pretty sure that was Paul Hogan who was Colonel Ty, who was also Deathstroke over on Smallville. And this fella, he played some random mercenary, military, government thug guy. I don't know. I don't remember. It wasn't a particularly memorable role, but you're one of those actors hanging around in Vancouver. Sometimes you got to take what you can get, right? Anywho, um, what I did like though is that honestly, this seems to me like a much more interesting take on the turtle as a character than anything I've ever seen from him in the comics. The idea of it's not really about me stealing something that's worth a lot of money, but I'm taking something from someone that's precious to them. And if you stop and think about it, it really is kind of amazing how some of the things that we value the most are things that are essentially perhaps not even really worth anything in terms of money. Like one thing that I had for a long time that was extremely important to me was this cheap watch that my grandmother had bought me for 20 bucks when I was getting ready to go with her and my grandfather on a vacation when I was a teenager. It was like this, just really basic. It was like a camping watch. Like I said, it cost like 19-20 bucks. But that was the last thing my grandmother died a few months after that vacation. So that watch, that cheap camping watch, was literally the last thing she ever bought me. So I held on to that thing for years, even after it broke and stopped working. I just couldn't bring myself to throw it away. And then just time went on, and I realized, you know what? This is a thing. It's a piece of plastic and stuff. I don't need this to remember her by. But nonetheless, if I'd lost that before I was really ready to for that moment in my life where I was able to put it aside, I'd have been really upset because having that last really great memory with my grandmother and my grandfather, who's still alive, was really important to me. In fact, just to sort of really drive it home for you, I'm not really the kind of person who keeps a lot of family pictures on my wall. Not because I don't care about my family, it's just I'm not sentimental that way. But one of two pictures of my family that I do have on my walls is a picture of me, my grandmother, and my grandfather from that trip. Now that picture, that still means something to me because that really was, the last real moments I had with the two of them together. And also, they took me to Comic Con in San Diego, which was awesome. Seriously, if you have never been, I've been 3 times. It's awesome. I mean, this is what I imagine nerd heaven is like. But anyway, getting back to the Flash. Um, like I said, I really do like this take on the character. They made the Turtle seem interesting. They made him seem very sinister, particularly after he kidnaps Patty. Now, why Patty doesn't jump a little bit more on the well, why does the Flash seem to consider me so special? It's like she's really wedded to this idea of like, oh, the Flash just cares about me the same as he cares about everybody. It's like, well, the Flash has saved your ass quite a few times, Patty. Have you not noticed that? Uh, but again, I guess maybe she just trusts that up to her propensity for getting into really sticky and unpleasant situations and needing to be saved. But yeah, and then that twist at the end where Harry kills the turtle. Okay, now that I did not see coming. I was thinking when they were tossing him in there in the pipeline, I'm like, oh, so I guess the illegal prison is back in operations. Because remember, when they captured Tokamak, they basically said, yeah, we're just going to lock him up in here until he calms down and agrees to keep his mouth shut about everything that's happened. So he probably got cut loose in fairly short order, I would imagine. But here it's back to, oh, well, we're just going to have to keep this guy locked up for, I don't know. So yeah, Harry kind of solved that problem. You know, how long exactly is it going to be before somebody looks at the camera in his cell or, checks on him in some way, shape, or form and then discovers that he's dead? But that speech that he gave about, how I would do anything to protect my family. I mean, that was some really rockin' stuff from Tom Cavanaugh. And yeah, I mean, it's just fun, fun, fun when he can really crank up the intensity. This show is so lucky to have a guy like Tom Cavanaugh. He is amazing. Um, and you can't help but wonder, well, if you have this, and then we have what's going on with Velocity 6, well, kind of, maybe we're going somewhere with that, because remember, in the comics, it's called Velocity 9. And this kind of seems like a nice segue into the whole situation with Jay. Now, the whole, oh, I lost my superpowers, so I'm dying, for some reason that's not really clear. But okay, whatever. I think, despite what Jay has said, that the formula that Harry has come up with is probably going to play some sort of a role in getting his powers back. Or it could be, like we thought, like the formula being the key to perhaps Jesse Quick getting powers in the future. And remember, in the comics, her father, Johnny Quick, also has powers. So that would be kind of interesting in my book if, as sort of a repentance for what he's done for like murdering the turtle and backstabbing Barry, if Harry ends up sort of deciding, okay, I did all these terrible things, now I have to be a hero to make up for it. And it's father daughter superheroes on Earth 2. I mean, again, that's just me spitballing, but that would be really, really awesome. And I kind of think it would be sort of cool, the idea of Harrison Wells on another Earth is a superhero. And then the idea that that's version of Keystone City, of Central City, has 3 speedsters looking after it. I mean, that would just be really, really awesome. Let's see, what else do we have? I also like the idea that Cisco has this sort of like it's a little lame that like Barry is completely clueless about this whole thing, but everybody else knows him. But the idea of Cisco having this sort of little nemesis of his own that he's been trying to track down, the whole Moby Dick, from hell's heart I stab at thee. I mean, that was cute. That really was cute, and very very in keeping with Cisco. And I like how Joe even mentioned that because of all of this, the people at the police station are calling him like Cisco of La Mancha or whatever it is that he said. Yeah, so beyond that, nothing particular to say about Jay. Caitlin, nothing huge to say about her this episode. Um, so speaking of Joe, this whole situation with Wally here, again, not really feeling this one. It just sort of feels so cliche and tired that like, oh, you weren't around, and I blame you for not being a dad, and like, hey, oh, you're a detective. How could you not know you had a son? Well, there's perfectly reasonable explanations for that, Wally, and from what I understand about the situation, you should be aware of these. I mean, has your mother not told you, I never told your father that I was pregnant with you when I left? And your father had good reasons to want to basically wash his hands of me when I left. So Wally is really just sort of lashing out at Joe for some pretty BS reasons. And all right, emotions are not always clean and rational things, but when you're trying to attack somebody and sort of like implying that they're a bad detective is their thing as the why, that argument doesn't really hold water. And I do like that Joe sort of was realistic about the whole situation. That yeah, he's obviously been trying too hard, and he handles that whole situation in a really nice way. It's like, look, how about I take a step back here. Let's just let's just try and hang out, maybe have a meal together. And to his credit, Wally does respond to this, which does show that he honestly does want to get to know his father. Now, the whole thing with like, oh, he's a street racer and this is how he's been getting money, that was just really weak. That was just really weak. But this whole street racing thing, I mean, this kind of feels like some sort of clumsy speed metaphor for them taking a step into eventually turning him into Kid Flash, which, I mean, I'm cool with that, but yeah, that particular part of the story just did not work for me. I did like that whole thing where Harrison Wells of Earth 2 explains to Cisco how Zoom got his name. Because Zoom is really kind of pushing it in terms of bad guy names. But the way he frames it, it really makes it work, and I did like that quite a bit. Now, the whole Barry and Patty situation. Again, this is another aspect of the show that I wasn't feeling. Now, I did like that stuff at the beginning, which was pretty easy to figure out was a dream sequence even before it happened. Um, of course, it's always awesome to hear Zoom actually speak. That's really, really great stuff. But again, it just sort of goes into the Patty, how have you not figured out that something funny is going on between like the Flash paying so much attention to you and the whole situation with Barry? Why the hell can you not spit this out? And the decision to sort of share who he is as the Flash of his own free will. I mean, that's a big decision. It's not like Cisco was stupid and blurted it out in front of Kendra. But Barry, it just sort of feels like, Barry, did you learn nothing from that whole situation with Iris? So, yeah, it just sort of kind of feels like Barry's inability to spit it out wasn't really so much a thing with his character, so much it was the story that they wanted to tell overriding what really makes sense for the character. And I really, really hate it when that happens on a show. Although Patty leaving to go off to become a CSI, like she said she wanted to, now that was pretty cool. I did like that. That seemed in keeping with her character, and she does have some pretty legit reasons to be upset about Barry. The way he's been acting and stuff. And oh yeah, the Reverse Flash is back. Now, okay, if you've been paying attention to the promotional materials, and the news, not the spoilers. I avoid spoilers that have been coming out online. That you knew this was coming, but yeah, this is gonna be some good stuff. I am really, really looking forward to this one, and it's one of those things that it makes sense in a kind of way because time travel and all this other stuff, especially with Legends of Tomorrow coming out, it's like, well, when you're dealing with time travel, you never have to completely throw a character away. You can always find some way to bring them back. And I kind of like this is probably I think going to be their setup for why they can basically occasionally trot out the Reverse Flash as an enemy for Barry, because you don't want to take a bad guy like that, use him for just the one season, and never see him again. I mean, did Arrow get rid of Malcolm Merlin? No, John Barrowman is basically a co-star on Arrow at this point. Now he did sort of lay low for a big chunk of season 3. I'm sorry, the seasons in between, but then he came back and he was a really big deal in the show last season. He's still a big deal in the show this season. Now I don't think we're going to be seeing a situation like that. We can't have the Reverse Flash popping up all the time, but having him come in for like sort of an annual Barry versus the Reverse Flash story once a year, I would be down with that. I would very much be down for a once a year, once a season throwdown between Barry and Reverse Flash. Because at the end of the day, the Reverse Flash really is his enemy, his arch enemy. And, you can trot out Poison Ivy and the Penguin and Two-Face and all that, but on a fairly regular basis, Batman needs to go out and mix it up with the Joker. Superman needs to mix it up with Lex Luthor. Spider-Man needs to take on the Green Goblin. Captain America needs to fight the Red Skull. The Fantastic Four need to fight Doctor Doom. It's just the way it works. And I think that covers everything that I had to say about this episode. So, with that said, I'm going to call it here. As always, guys, please comment, rate, and subscribe. And of course, you can follow me on Twitter at Hoosier Jedi. You can also join me on Tumblr at Jedi Reviewer. And yeah, until next time, take care and have a good one.